Thank you. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes walking through the report and going through some of the basics. So this is the less fun, less interesting than the stories and the context component of the press conference here. So I'm going to walk through what we see as some of the high points. And if you take a look at the report, which is available at our website, oneohionow.org, and we have paper copies here for you as well, of course. You'll see that the big takeaway is that Ohio has serious challenges. And those of us that look at this stuff closely, I think, are aware of this. This isn't a shocking takeaway. But when you see all the data in one place like this, in a way that you often do not, those challenges, I think, become very clear. Our approach then is to say that we have these serious challenges that we're going to need to see investments to solve these challenges. That when it comes to things like the opioid crisis, when it comes to major areas of need around college affordability, around pre-K access, around hunger and poverty issues, around a whole wide range of issues, that without serious investment, it's going to be very difficult to tackle these challenges. And so then our approach, certainly as a tax and budget policy coalition, is to look at this and say we're going to need more revenue to make it possible. We're going to need to have revenue to invest in solutions to solve these major problems that we see in our state. And I think it's just important, the reason we put this report out, to look at this big picture, to say here is what's happening on a whole. If you add up all these numbers, that taking it, one report at a time, it doesn't let you see the whole picture. But when you see that whole picture and you keep your eye on the ball, you recognize that you have some major challenges ahead and that we need to invest to solve those problems. This last weekend I was reading an article, it was an old article that was in Governing Magazine about Harlan County, Kentucky, one of the places that's been most hit by changes in the economy, and particularly in changes with coal mining. And they were talking about how many jobs have been lost there and then across the state of Kentucky. And you couldn't help but think that that story was a very similar story to many parts of Ohio, and that overall we've seen, particularly with our economic challenges, that we have a long way to go to get to a place where we're back where folks have good jobs, good paying jobs, and the economy is functioning. And that really is what undergirds all of these other pieces, that without good paying jobs, without folks having their median wages go up, basically every one of these other metrics around health and home, education, inequality are going to struggle as well. And I bring up the story of reading about this piece in Harlan County, Kentucky, because they talked about the story of a county commissioner there who was working to try to fix these problems and realizing that they had very few resources to work with, and that really they were hoping to get a few jobs here and a few jobs there, and it just was not making up the difference. Well, in a state like Ohio, where we have moved billions of dollars through major tax changes, those are the dollars that allow you to make the meaningful investments instead of having small changes that are very small around the edges. You can actually invest in things that people will feel and people will see and that can make a big difference in our economy. And I really believe we have to get back to the basics on building our economy. We have to get back to investing in infrastructure, investing in education, investing in quality of life, and health and human services to ensure that people have a great opportunity here in the state of Ohio. I think the data is pretty clear that we are already statistically falling behind in nearly every major category. Without a change of course, we're looking at a place that does not have opportunity for us, for our children, and for our grandchildren. Period. I mean, I assume everybody in this room can see that, can feel that. For those of us that pay attention to what's happening with all these different reports, I hope that this can sort of put it into a stark contrast, the reality that we've got some serious work to do to make this a place that can be prosperous over the long term. So just want to highlight a few particular pieces of the report with that context of Ohio really having serious challenges, needing to invest in them, and then needing the revenue to make those investments. So just to look briefly at each section. So around health and home, I just want to point out a few things that I think help illuminate the data that's throughout the report and what's happening in our state. When we look at infant mortality, for instance, it's notable that our ranking has actually gone up. So we've gotten better from we're 39th now, we're 45th in our report of the same on the same category last year. But actually, our rate has gotten worse. The infant mortality rate itself has gotten worse. So it's one of these things where we've done our best job to sort of keep a consistent line of showing national rankings, how Ohio compares, and then in each section throughout the report, giving the context of what's happened over time. But it is worth noting that in some of these cases, it's not so simple as saying, well, we're 39th, we're doing better than we were last year. Well, actually, as it comes to kids, and as Nick and I from One Ohio Now, both of us have had kids that have been in the NICU in the last couple of years, and this has become more than just a statistic, it's become a real thing. And so that's worth noting. Hunger is another one where the data tells a different story. So while our hunger ranking has gotten a little better from 47th to 44th, still in serious a serious challenge, that's one where we've gotten a little better, and the rate has gotten a little bit better. But it's all relative, right? It's just a little bit better within a much bigger story. And then skipping to health insurance, last year we were at 8th, and this year we're at 15th, so our ranking has fallen, but this is an area where also our rate of uninsured folks in our state has actually improved. So that's just to give you a sense of how the data has changed how the data changes and how there's context for each of these simplistic rankings of thumbs up or thumbs down. Looking at the education category, I'll just key in for a moment on high school graduation. This is one of these areas where we have basically been pretty flat, and what's happening is the nation is just growing at a faster rate. And so that's why you see us moving from 29th last year to 39th this year, a significant 10-place change over the course of 1 year. Then we look at economy and unemployment. I think the story here is what we all know, that we have a sluggish economy. We have had consistent challenges in growing our economy in a way that is good for everybody. And then, I mentioned the infrastructure report. I'll just key in on that one. Our real belief is that this is one of these core areas of investment that's necessary to build the foundation of a strong economy. Not only does pretty much every business and economic survey come back and say the importance of having a strong infrastructure, but we also see that the rates of return on investment infrastructure are strong for our economy. So we added in a section that gave a little bit more context on infrastructure because we felt like it was one of these metrics that, while we didn't have a national ranking for it based on the way the data is given, it deserved to be elevated to that point of one of these core metrics that we review. And then we do this section on inequality because as we've looked at this the last 2 years, as we look at the data, it's just impossible not to see the discrepancies based on race and class and gender and other metrics here in the state. And so we've pulled out a few in particular. I'll just note the high school graduation by income is one that's particularly concerning right now in Ohio, certainly amongst many other metrics as well where this shows up. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a sense of sort of how the report's structured. We take these metrics. We spent a lot of time last year talking to folks about this, trying to get feedback, trying to see were there other pieces of information we should add in, ways that we should change the way the data was presented, or particular metrics that should be added. So I'll just throw that out to you all. If there are things that you feel like are clearly missing or should be changed in some way, we're certainly open to that feedback. Our hope is that this is sort of a benchmark, an evaluative measure for all the talk that we have around making government as efficient and effective as possible. It's really amazing how few places have goals. And for us, this makes sense that you'd say, here are some areas you want to see how you're doing on a consistent basis, and that the State of the State address is the time that you would circle back and look at how you're doing in a consistent way. And so this is our way of sort of doing a check-in on how we're really doing here in the state of Ohio.